This week on Head to Head, Star Wars pushing boundaries.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Mansell.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. Have you seen Knives Out yet?
Not yet.
I got to tell you. So, I saw Knives Out. It actually came out on Wednesday.
Okay.
Or no, Tuesday. I think it was supposed to come out on Wednesday or Thursday or something. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it came out, and I was actually able to get tickets for it because I didn't have to work that night. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll go check it out because you know how long I've been waiting for this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm really especially curious because it's Rian Johnson going back to doing a Rian Johnson movie.
Right.
So for those of you guys who don't know, Rian Johnson basically made this movie called Knives Out, and it essentially is his take on a whodunit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, kind of a dark comedy Clue or something.
Right.
Which actually, Clue, I think, was a dark comedy. But anyway, it was amazing.
Yeah, I heard it. They had phenomenal actors in the movie, of course. You had,
But
some
the
of
writing, the comedy, like everything was spot on. The cinematography, it basically shows you that, yes, Rian Johnson is a really good filmmaker. It's just his take on Star Wars, just for whatever reason, didn't resonate with everybody. But yeah, he's phenomenal, man.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people just have to be mindful of is that it's not that people don't have talent. It's just a matter of, do they fit in a certain space?
Well,
no pun intended.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you, here's the thing. And I think I lose track sometimes because, I do so much on social media and everything, but I essentially was answering one of our listeners. And I was talking about how Star Wars is such a tricky thing. Mm-hmm. Even the best filmmakers in the world, it's like you have to strike such a balance because you can't veer away too much from the traditions and the things that make Star Wars what it is, but you also don't want to be derivative.
Yeah, it's very much, it's kind of like life imitates art within Star Wars because, you always have the battle of light versus dark. And finding that balance in the Force. So the same way with creating films or TV shows within Star Wars, you kind of have to strike that balance of, okay, living up to the ideals and the concepts of the original trilogy, which made us all fall in love with Star Wars to begin with. Yeah,
that's essentially what set the bar.
Exactly.
Was the original trilogy.
But now, how do you keep that same thread while still moving forward, that's the reason why we have this show today.
But you know what? It makes me excited about this because I think that, there's still talk that Rian Johnson's going to get his own trilogy. Mm-hmm. I think that if he's able to do something with new characters, I think it's going to be really good.
Exactly. And I think we've always said that it's like sometimes you need that fresh face and to start with a clean slate, because when you're trying to pick up, it's kind of like what I, experienced with my accident. I told you about, I had surgery done and I was kind of worried about hey, did this guy do it right? Or, I was kind of worried about some things. So I wanted to get a second opinion. And the other guy I went to was really reputable, but his whole thing is I really don't like going behind other surgeons. And you can understand why, because it's kind of like now you don't know if it's which side is going to cause the improvement or make it worse. So even in the movies, you kind of have some things where you have a bunch of different directors where JJ established this new trilogy for us. And
even he got criticism, though. Yeah,
he got criticized, but at least it wasn't necessarily to the extent that Rian went through.
No, the worst that JJ got was it was a little bit too derivative. Kind of felt like he remade Episode 4. Mm-hmm. Which isn't really the worst criticism in the world. Pretty much everybody was all on board at first. Yeah, it wasn't until The Last Jedi came out that, people are still giving him grief about it, and it's a shame because, like I said, he's really good. So if you guys haven't seen Knives Out, don't get the knives out.
Wow. You had to do
knew
it.
I had to do it. I had to go there. I sometimes wonder if that wasn't like a subconscious thing. But if you guys haven't seen it, I urge you, after this podcast, go out and check it out. I guarantee you'll love it. And when you do see it, leave a comment in the comment section below and let us know what you guys thought. All right.
Yeah.
Well, after seeing a good movie, I think it's time to go to the Cantina.
Yeah, we just finished the holiday, Thanksgiving, so time to wash down all the turkey and ham and a nice cool beverage.
All right, well, what do we got first?
All right, so I've been, reading some things online, and one of the cool things I kind of came across was Daisey Ridley's take on the progression of her character, Rey, and the emotional toll it took on her. Now, physically, it was very grueling for her because she took kickboxing classes. She was doing a lot of, just to kind of be in the shape that she needs to pull off a lot of different stunts and fighting sequences. But the emotional part, I really didn't take into consideration for her. But she really kind of went into the fact that she had to really go into some different dark places in order to give the emotions to Rey for certain situations.
Well, then that kind of makes me wonder what we're in for when it comes to this movie, because, she has to go into some dark places, and that kind of implies to me anyway that maybe there's a little bit of dark side action going on in this.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with Palpatine being back, and he's the ultimate bad guy. I mean, so he's going to push you to that limit. One of the things that, she spoke about was her parentage, which, of course, everybody still wants to know. And she even alluded to this one little gem that I liked. She said that Rey doesn't necessarily not believe Kylo as far as what he said to her, but she feels like it's more to the story.
Well, and I think that that's pretty much what everybody thought. Even, as an audience member, when we're watching the film, we didn't necessarily think that Kylo was lying, but that there's more to the story. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm not so sure that Kylo knows.
Yeah, I think
there's more to the story, but I don't know if Kylo actually knows the full story.
No, I don't think he does. I think he knows just the part that he could see. Mm-hmm. And, or
maybe Snoke told him.
Right, exactly. So she talked about that. She talked about just the growth and development of Rey, even within her powers. She may mention that she definitely could do some more cool, fun stuff, but she wouldn't use the word confident for Rey just yet. She's more like still trying to understand and figure out her place in all this, as she said before. But she's a lot more in control of her abilities now, as opposed to, the other movies. But she's still not as far as confident in who she is or who she is to become.
So she's probably, I guess you can call it almost like an Empire Strikes Back Luke in a way. Mm-hmm. Maybe toward the end.
Right.
Because Luke definitely was able to use the Force. He was a little bit more confident in his abilities, but he wasn't like Return of the Jedi Luke.
Right.
He knew exactly who he was, what he was doing. He knew all the power that he had. Mm-hmm. And he had not just the confidence in his powers, but in his place and in his role. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he was able to emotionally go against Vader and Palpatine. A lot of people don't think about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think because, Luke found out, and I'd like to make this comparison with he and Rey, is that Luke found out that Vader was his dad in Empire Strikes Back. But then it wasn't really until Return of the Jedi when he actually met back up with Yoda. And he was like, well, it's like he still wasn't sure.
Yeah, right.
But he's like, is Darth Vader my father? And he's like, told you did he? And unfortunately, it's like, well, unfortunately, I know the truth. So it's like he was still kind of uncertain. It's still as powerful as Luke was at that time. He still wasn't quite certain. And then, of course, he didn't want to kill. He's like, I can't kill my own father. So he's like, well, you have to. So he was still kind of battling with that, even at that stage of his development. And I think that's kind of where Rey is too, because I think she's kind of a combination of Empire Strikes Back, Luke, and maybe early Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it could be. I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to say, though, because we don't really know everything that she's going to fit. One of the things that I keep talking about to some of my friends is that we see this conspicuous absence of any dark side Rey all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. You know, like we got that one little nugget in the featurette.
Yeah.
And then nothing.
Well, I think that's because JJ is saving that. Like, that's the tease.
But still, I mean, it's one of those things that nothing. Because if you think about it, right, we got a lot more Palpatine lines in these TV spots.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, okay. And the other thing, which I was talking to, I think it was Patrick again, Patrick McIntosh. Mm-hmm. Bless him. You know, he and CD Moore actually go back and forth with us. Well, me. You got to get better at checking the Facebook, man, and engaging with some of these guys. But yeah, we go back and forth a lot on the Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they brought up, one of the guys brought up, was the fact that we haven't really seen anything about Luke. Like, nothing. I mean, yeah, we've heard a couple of voiceovers, but there's been no indication on, you know, whether he's going to be alive or
of course
truly dead. And I mean, of course, we know that's because, but it makes me wonder, though, you know, that whole, well, it goes back to what we talked about last time, which is what a lot of people have been commenting on, is the fact that, you know, is Luke Skywalker alive? One of the things that, you know, could point to that is the fact that we haven't seen him in any of the trailers. If he's a Force ghost, it doesn't seem like it would spoil that much to show it to us.
No, I think we all kind of know that, though. I think we kind of, and even Mark Hamill even said that in this movie, he is a Force ghost.
Well,
and the question is, does he stay a Force ghost?
Does he stay a Force ghost, and is he really a Force ghost? Don't forget, this is JJ's movie. JJ famously told all the Star Trek people that Khan wasn't going to be in Star Trek 2, and then he ended up being the
main villain.
The main villain.
True.
You know, it's kind of one of those misdirection things. Now, I don't necessarily think that Mark Hamill would... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not after The Last Jedi. I don't think he would want to go there, and everybody was like, well, you said...
Yeah, because now the heat would be on him.
Right, then it would be on him.
No, I think everything.
But you do have a point.
I think everything is from a certain point of view. I think it's really like, okay, yes, from a certain point, yes, at one point he was a Force ghost, or will be a Force ghost, but that doesn't mean that he won't come back, or maybe he left and, you know, he comes back, fights, and then becomes a Force ghost. Like, we don't know at what point.
Well, and the other thing too is that happen. Looking at Yoda in The Last Jedi, you know, it's kind of like a Force ghost isn't what a Force ghost used to be.
True.
You know, this might not necessarily be the Obi-Wan style. This could be more the Neo Yoda style.
Or it could be, you know, at that time he didn't, you know, maybe Obi-Wan could have done it all along, but he didn't need to because you had Yoda around. So it's like, I don't need to do this when you still have the Grandmaster of the Force basically.
Well, it just makes me wonder too, because, you know, I don't even remember which podcast this was, but you brought up a while ago when we were doing this that maybe because when Obi-Wan did it, it was like Qui-Gon hadn't learned it that long ago, and he passed that on to Obi-Wan. But as time has progressed, you know, maybe they know how to do more things as Force ghosts now than what they used to do.
Not only that, but you would just surmise that they're more powerful. I mean, Yoda's more powerful than Obi-Wan, and definitely Luke eventually eclipsed Obi-Wan, of course, because he eventually became a Grandmaster himself. So it's like maybe the upper echelon of Jedi can actually do more, even in the Force, because they have a stronger connection as opposed to Obi-Wan. But like I said, we don't know what Obi-Wan could or couldn't do because, once again, he didn't have to. You know, you still had, he knew Yoda was still around to teach him, so it's kind of like, why do I need to do this when I have the teacher of all teachers still around?
Well, it makes me wonder, though, like, after The Rise of Skywalker comes out and this closes out the saga, now they can go back in books and comics and all this stuff and really explore this stuff without the danger of, you know, spoiling a future film or something or risking the continuity being blown.
True.
So who knows? Maybe we'll see more of that.
Yep.
All right. Well, what about you guys? I don't even know. What are we going to ask them?
Well, it's not really
I was going to say, what do you guys think?
I mean, I guess, you know, I guess their opinions on, you know, the emotional toll that is taken to play
All right,
Rey.
let's go with that. What do you guys think about the emotional toll that this is taking on Rey? Do you guys... Let us know in the comments section. I think we're going to leave that there. Yep. What do we got next?
Next. All right, man. So I was thinking about some of the films that we've watched, and of course, we're getting close to the end of the complete saga, as you just mentioned. Yep. So we've seen the end of the prequels. We've seen the end of the original trilogy.
We've seen the end of the rebellion.
We've definitely seen the end of Kenobi.
Yes.
Well, not yet, because he actually has a show, but and we've seen the end of Rogue One. So, like, out of all these films that we've had, which one has given you personally the most satisfying ending?
Okay.
I know this sounds like a Duel of the Fates question, but
it does. And actually, when you first, when I first read the outline for this, and I was like, wow, this is like a Duel of the Fates thing. But I could see why maybe you brought it up for discussion in the Cantina. Because this is kind of like one of those things, too, where, a bunch of guys are sitting around.
Exactly.
Talking about it. Plus, I mean, a lot of times we try to keep it at just two things, not three, but I digress. Which one
gave you the most?
Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One,
or Return of the Jedi?
Personally.
Yep.
So now this is like a personal thing. This is not...
Yeah, it's not based upon...
based on, artistically or snob-wise or whatever.
Yeah, just which one gave you the most satisfying? Like, you know what? This was really good for me.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd have to go with Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
I mean, simply because it wrapped everything up. It was good. And it goes back. I was actually reading this interview with George Lucas. Actually, it's kind of funny because somebody brought up, I was watching, I wish I can remember the name of the show now. On YouTube, I ran across a video that was made a few years ago where somebody had basically tweeted to Rian Johnson this whole interview that Lucas did with Kasdan. Kasdan was interviewing Lucas during the time of, I think, Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
And talking about, he circled the part where it said, well, somebody has to die or whatever at the end of this. And Lucas is like, no, like the biggest mistake would be kill Luke or something. That was kind of like the knife twisting in Rian Johnson's back, basically. And, of course, Rian Johnson answered it by saying, well, not necessarily or whatever. But what I thought was really interesting about this interview was the fact that George went on to say that these movies, it's good triumphs over evil. It's a fairy tale. Nobody has to die. The good guys don't have to die. I mean, yes, it can make an emotional impact and blah, blah, blah. And that's what Kasdan was trying to point out. But I mean, really, that wasn't ever Lucas's intent. And I think that's why when you watch Return of the Jedi, it's exactly that. The good guys win. Everybody's dancing on Endor. There's this whole celebration going on. Luke's looking off at the distance and seeing Anakin reunited with his other Force Ghost friends. I mean, I just think that it was a really satisfying ending. You walked away feeling like you got closure. And this is cool. I will say that the endings of all the other movies that you mentioned, Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One, were incredible. But I mean, I guess if you want to talk about the thing that gave you the most emotional, like satisfying, like, this is really cool, I'd have to go with that one.
Okay. For me, I'm going to go with Rogue One.
I kind of figured you might.
Yeah, Rogue One would definitely be more of the satisfying ending. One, because for me, I think it was a story that, you really didn't think about. But now when you see it...
Actually, I did. I thought about that a lot, even as a kid, after seeing A New Hope. Because the whole thing is that, you knew that these spies had died to bring, these Death Star plans. And you're kind of like, I kind of want to see that.
Well, I mean, I just figured it was like some quick little thing like, hey, guess what we heard, type thing. It wasn't like a big war about it, so I think that was the cool thing about Rogue One is it kind of put things in perspective.
And very well.
Yeah, very well. As far as kind of like, all right, no, you really don't understand. Like, this is everything that kind of went into it, and I think it's poignant that, that they kind of showed different aspects of what was going on in the galaxy from different points of view. When you have those extremists with Saw Gerrera and what they were doing versus Jyn Erso, and then her father Galen's what he was trying to prevent, and this whole thing is centered around the Death Star.
Well, I think it's a perfect predecessor to The Mandalorian for that reason. It's one of the first movies that gets you a little bit outside of the main Skywalker
saga
circle.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, if you think about it, everybody in the original trilogy and prequel trilogy are all directly related to the Skywalker somehow. They have a Skywalker with them most of the time. Where the Rogue One was the first time that you actually saw stuff happening. Like, you can imagine all the events of, you know, A New Hope and all this other stuff like happening, but there's all this stuff going on over here too. And I think Rogue One was the first time you saw that, and that's kind of where The Mandalorian's going. So for that reason, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and this the first time you really could see, like, okay, like the old new Vader, I guess, kind of really flexing his muscle, and you're just like, oh, okay, like this is why. I mean, don't get me wrong, like when you first see A New Hope and he's choking, like, you know, guards with one hand. Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's
your
impressive.
whole thing is like, why is he so feared?
Exactly.
And really, now you see that after witnessing that. Yeah,
it's just his presence. You know, just a few times when you see when he met with Krennic, you know, at his palace, and then that was the first time, and then you see him again at the very end, and he's like, okay. And then, of course, how everything leads up to, matches perfectly up to A New Hope. And even the whole thing with Leia, you know, it's like, well, what have they given us? And she just turns around and she says hope. And it's just like, yeah, it kind of has that, like,
a little
wow.
on the nose, but
yeah, a little on the nose. I mean, I but get it. Yeah, it was kind of like,
it was cool. No, I would definitely say that was the second most satisfying ending for me. Because again, you know, and that's my problem with Revenge of the Sith, is that it's a satisfying ending, but there's more. When you talk about something emotionally satisfying, it's all tied up, it's over. You know, you assume the galaxy lived happily ever after, but as we saw,
yeah, not so much.
Not so much. Well, what about you guys? Which one do you think had the most satisfying ending? Was it Revenge of the Sith, where we more or less got the prequels tied up and, you know, we saw the beginnings of the Empire? Was it Rogue One, where we saw, okay, this is how the Death Star plans ended up in the hands of the rebellion, and now it kicks off the entire original trilogy? Or was it Return of the Jedi, the one that tied everything up in a nice, neat little bow and gave us a happily ever after ending until, of course, The Force Awakens? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit us up on our social media at HeadToHeadSW, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, what's next?
All right, so on Disney Plus, we know we have the original trilogy of films. And apparently there's been another edit done to A New Hope, where we have the infamous scene between Han and Greedo, of who shot first, of course. And they even added a little bit more dialogue where I guess Greedo kind of muttered something profane and Rodian.
Have you seen this yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't actually seen it.
We both have Disney Plus, but
yeah, I haven't seen it yet. But
I started watching it.
I've heard about the word. It's almost like malarkey or something like that. It's something like that. It's close to it, but it's basically, you know, they kind of added some more dialogue with Greedo, and I guess he's kind of like antagonizing Han to do it. So I think they're still trying to kind of. Because even I don't even like the way they redid it the first time where they made,
was terrible.
Greedo shoot first.
It was terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible because I think that's,
and from a narrative standpoint,
that's what I'm more so concerned with. The editing
effect was obvious. An edit, it was obvious. It takes you right out of the movie, actually.
True.
But even from a narrative, like even if they had pulled off the CGI perfectly, it changes the whole narrative of that scene, and it's terrible. Yeah, I mean, because it takes away how smooth and cunning that, you know, I'm about to say Lando, what Han really was, because
he's sitting there kind of having this conversation, and he's drawing Greedo's attention away from what he's really doing. It's almost kind of like the whole Kylo thing, how he did to Snoke.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it reminded me of.
That's what the Snoke thing reminded me of. It totally reminded me, like, hey, this is kind of like a Han and Greedo thing.
Yeah.
Well, pre-97 Han and Greedo thing.
Right.
But I mean, the backstory behind it basically was that before Lucas sold off Lucasfilm back in 2012, he made one little tweak, which is what we're talking about now, that nobody actually knew about. So then when Disney re-released it and came out with the 4K version or whatever, they used that cut of it, and that's what we're all talking about now. So the funny thing is, I've been watching... Like, I started because I'm like, ooh, Star Wars in 4K, I got to check this out.
Right.
So I started watching it, and I think I'm up to the point where Uncle Owen and Luke find the droids. So I haven't gotten that far yet. Right. So I'm really curious because I didn't know there was extra dialogue in it.
Yeah, it's like an extra dialogue where I think he mutters something. I forgot how they actually, but it's kind of like
See, I was kind of hoping that this is going to be a situation where Lucas fixed it. I thought maybe he actually fixed it.
I thought he fixed it.
I didn't know it was like he went in there and
screwed it up even
basically screwed it up even more. It's like, dude, you're like this brilliant storytelling filmmaker guy. Like, really?
Yeah.
I don't understand why he did it.
I think they just need to just leave that scene alone. Like, stop it. Like, nothing else needs to be done to that. I mean, honestly, if you're going to do anything, put it back to the way it originally was.
And here's the thing. I actually like a lot of the additional scenes that the special editions had. There were some, like, I'll give you an example. The whole Jabba Han thing, I love that. Because I remember they had actually, that's been known to us for a while. They had long released the footage that had the stand-in guy.
Right.
And I was just like, man, you know what? That scene actually adds a lot of context to both The New Hope and especially Empire Strikes Back. Because, you know, when Han keeps going, yeah, I got a price on my head, I got to get back, it kind of shows you how, you know, Jabba had this whole, like, almost fatherly relationship toward Han. And then he really felt betrayed because you're like, why is he so angry? And it's like, because he had this relationship with Han that he didn't really have with the other bounty hunters. And it's kind of like, okay, this is what I get for being cool. So, you know, of course, Jabba being who he is, he puts a price on his head that's so high that, you know, everybody in the galaxy looks for him. So,
and the other thing, too, about that is just like, given how, like, we know Jabba to be in the sense of he's this giant slug, you know, the fact that he took himself out of his little perch and personally paid him a visit, like,
right.
You know, it's like that kind of had some, like, personal, like, he wanted to talk to Han personally, basically.
Exactly.
About this.
Get it straightened out.
And then you call him like Han, my bookie. Like, you know, it's just like, or Han, my boy, basically.
Yeah, and that basically is what I'm saying. It's like it adds so much depth and everything to that whole, I guess, subplot.
Of course, the funniest thing is when he stepped on his tail and he's like, ah. That's the funniest thing to me.
Well, and that was the problem, is the fact that now on the one that was released in 97, it was awful. Like, the Jabba CGI was terrible. When they finally released it on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, it's like, it was better. It's still not perfect, but it's better. You know, that's more of a technical issue. But the problem that I have is that there's some stuff, like in Return of the Jedi, when they completely changed the song.
Oh, yeah.
Snoodles sings.
Yeah, I hated that.
That's a terrible song.
True.
It's a terrible song. It's just terrible. Everything about it's awful.
Yeah.
You know, but in Empire Strikes Back, the two things that I love are the Wampa scene, because it adds a little bit more urgency to that whole thing. And then, of course, putting Ian McDiarmid in and expanding the dialogue. Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah. And, of course, for me, like, the biggest thing I loved about the expanded with the
special editions.
I want to say remastered, but special edition versions was the dogfighting scenes in A New Hope. Like,
oh yeah, right.
Just the shots they got, and then how they man, that was just, it added so much more.
It really did.
To that whole scene. You know?
And see, that's a benefit of something that's like, okay, cool. This is a way you use technology to enhance your movie. But the problem is, for every scene that we got where the movie was enhanced, we got another scene where it was unfortunately soiled.
Well, as you also say, light rises in darkness. I know you're tired of me saying that.
Hey, man, it's true, though. You know, and this whole... I can't believe he was messing with the Han and Greedo thing. As much crap as he got.
Yeah, I know, right?
You know, it just seems unfathomable for him to even mess it up further. I don't know if he thought he was fixing it, like, well, okay, I'm going to have Greedo shoot first, but now I'll add more of a reason or a little bit. I don't know. I have to watch the scene.
Yeah.
I have to admit, it's funny because, you know, we bring this up and neither one of us have seen it. But if you guys have seen it, let us know in the comments section what you thought of it, you know, and any other insight you might have, because I personally don't think that this was necessary, but hey, whatever.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, I think we just gonna leave the cantina now.
It's time to leave the cantina already.
Yeah, it's time to leave, man.
Time flies. We had some really good discussions on this one.
Definitely.
I liked it.
Well, now it's up to Duel of the Fates. All right, so this week, the coolest... I know you're a fan of the troopers. Like, you always told me as a kid you tried to collect, like, all the different type of troopers.
Right.
So I'm going to try to see if we can narrow it down to who are the coolest looking troopers between the Death Trooper, the First Order Trooper, and the new Sith Trooper. Who's the coolest looking one?
Coolest looking trooper out of those. I noticed that you purposely left out the Snow Trooper.
Yes, I did.
Which is still my favorite.
I know, because that would have been all too easy.
You know, I was never really fond of the Biker Scout. I know I'm going to talk about every other one except the ones you mentioned. Like, some of them I thought that were kind of cool, like the Sand Trooper. Those, they don't really get enough love, in my opinion. The Sand Troopers are kind of cool, but they don't, you don't really see them much. But, okay. So, my favorite color is red, so I got to go with the Sith Trooper.
Okay.
However, I will say that conceptually, I like the idea of the Death Trooper. I thought that was kind of a cool thing. Back in, I want to say, late 80s, early 90s, I had this whole idea in my head. I never really wrote it as fan fiction, but I kind of in my head did, to where I thought Episode 7 would go. And I had this whole thing where I had one of Exar Kun's like descendants that I called Darkoon, which is actually my PS4 name, if anybody cares and wants to like hit me up on that. But anyway, I basically had this whole thing, and one of Darkoon's main like right-hand men or whatever was a black armored stormtrooper. And I thought it was kind of cool that they started to adopt that a little bit, you know, and then you had, of course, the design of the Death Trooper, which is an even more expanded version of that. But I can make a case for all three of these guys, but I have to go with the Sith Trooper because I love red. I think it's kind of a cool design. It reminds me of something, too. I'm trying to think of specifically who it reminds me of, but it reminds me of some other... I don't know if it's in the sci-fi world or what, but it reminds me of something. Okay. But and I'm really excited to see the role that these guys are going to play. I hope it's not some stupid thing where they're like in the movie for like 3 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think we have seen them in a new TV spot.
Yeah, we did, but I mean, I don't know. It could be like another Captain Phasma thing. True. Which, by the way, that would be like one of my favorite trooper designs.
Phasma.
Yeah, the whole chromed out stormtrooper.
Right.
That's pretty sweet.
True. I think for me, it would be definitely the Death Trooper. You know, I think they just, from the first time I saw them in Rogue One, you know, I'm just like, because I've always been obsessed with just elite forces anyway, especially when it comes to the military.
Well, that's why I think that the Sith Trooper could actually end up, because think about it. It's like didn't we say, I don't remember now, but were they supposed to have like limited force powers or something?
Yeah, that's the speculation, that they actually were people that Palpatine found that were force sensitive or have force-like abilities to kind of combat anybody else who had.
I mean, how could you deny the coolness of a force-using stormtrooper?
Well, I'm not saying that's not cool.
I mean,
but I said look. So the look.
But you were talking about how, like, you know, you're obsessed with like elite special forces. You talked about everything but the look.
Well, I wasn't finished yet. You started talking about it, but no, I mean, I was going to say, like, even looking at your shirt, because you actually have the Death Trooper shirt on today. You know, I love the look of them because, like, with the whole.
Only because they don't have Sith Trooper shirts yet.
Right, because I love the green eyes thing. Like, I think,
it is true.
Like, that was cool. Like, it's almost like night vision on those guys. I mean, they just look menacing, man. I mean, they just look like you do not want to screw with those guys.
I will give it to you on this front, because I will say that before the Sith Trooper came out, Death Trooper all the way.
Yeah.
Snow Trooper, really. But I mean,
yeah.
You know, out of these, well, I guess it'd be, who would you have put in if we didn't introduce or have the Sith Troopers introduced to us? Who would you have put in there?
Okay, so we didn't have the Sith, but we still had a Death in the First Order Trooper.
Right.
What other trooper would I put in there?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Because I know you wouldn't do the Snow Trooper because you already know what I would have picked.
Yeah, I probably would have done probably the original, or either the original or the Clone Trooper.
Oh, the Clone Trooper.
The Clone Troopers were cool.
Clone Troopers were really cool.
Yeah.
Actually, the First Order Troopers kind of remind me of like a cross between the Clone Trooper and the original Stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
I always loved the original Stormtroopers too, honestly. Like when I was a kid and I first saw A New Hope, I was enamored with Stormtroopers.
Well, when we went to go to the to the DSO.
The costume?
Yeah, and we saw those guys walking around in those costumes. And I'm just like, I mean, it's one thing to see them like on a movie screen, but to actually see one like they're really real. But I mean, to see a person, a real authentic Stormtrooper, you're like, I can imagine like a whole legion of these guys. I mean, that'd be sweet.
And I'll go one further than that. When we saw that that costume exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
With all the Star Wars stuff. And we actually got to see all the Stormtrooper outfits like in person.
Yeah, even the pilot troopers will look like
the pilot troopers
the TIE pilots, yeah. Those are sweet.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. I mean, they pretty much, one of the things that I always thought was cool about Star Wars in general was they really paid a lot of attention to, even in the early days, because, you know, now it's like you got a trooper for almost everything. You got like flame troopers, and, you know, pretty much everything you can imagine.
Yeah,
you
underwater
have.
Troopers, you got all types of...
Exactly. But what I thought was really cool, even in the original trilogy days, was that Lucas had like different troopers for different things. Like you had the stormtroopers, the snow troopers, the biker scouts. They might have had a couple more. Of course, the TIE pilots. They were kind of like stormtrooper outfits.
And even speaking of the troopers, I remember you brought up the fact that like how cool would it be to see a stormtrooper with the Force. You know, I kind of like almost felt that way in Return of the Jedi with the biker scouts. Simply because, like, at a high rate of speed that they're flying through this forest, they were doing pretty well. I mean, Luke had to be using the Force in order to do half of this stuff.
There's no way in the world I would have gone like maybe 30 to 50 feet and I would have hit a tree.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are like going like what seems to be like 70 miles an hour in the air.
And
they're
like,
zipping through like
know the terrain.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, you don't know where these trees are going to fall. They had to duck under some things. They had to go in between stuff. And then they're still trying to fight while in these things. I mean, that's still kind of impressive.
I can relate to that. Did I tell you that I had to drive 3 miles once in a scissor lift?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not cool. And especially when you're like driving and there's like trees and you have to all duck down and you're getting hit. So,
yeah.
I don't know. That just reminded me of that. It was kind of a random thing, I know, but.
Eric's war stories, ladies and gentlemen.
I got a lot of them.
Well, yeah. So, who's your favorite trooper?
Yeah, who's your favorite? Which of the let's not limit it. Let's not limit it to the 3.
Oh, okay.
All right. Wait a minute. I changed my mind. let's limit it to the 3. Which is your favorite trooper out of these 3? And then, which one's your favorite trooper? Overall.
There we go.
Let us know in the comments section. All right, that's our Duel of the Fates segment.
Yep.
All right. So now it's, well, I'm not going to take this away from you. You do the introductions like you always do.
Thank you. I didn't want to file a grievance, but yeah, so next we have From a Certain Point of View. All right, and this is our featured topic. And this week, the whole topic is how should the Star Wars franchise push the boundaries for future greatness? So when I came up with this, you know,
I was going to say, you got to give me a little bit of background before I can really talk about this.
I'll be a ground trooper for you. So essentially, you know, we kind of talked about this. We talk about this off and on, actually, but I really wanted to kind of talk about the direction that Star Wars can go, because a lot of people are complaining about, okay, this is too much of a rehash of that. It reminds us too much of this, but they still want something different and something greater. So something like, for example, The Mandalorian, you know, that's a show that's perfect.
Oh, I think that's pushing a lot of boundaries.
Yes, pushing boundaries as far as expansion of the lore or expansion of the franchise, all still while keeping the initial vibe or the feelings of Star Wars, because it's kind of hard. You know brought it up before in another show when we were talking about how you have to kind of keep people engaged into the Star Wars world.
There we go. First, you got to say it.
It's too much Cantina, but all while, you know, creating new experiences for these new fans that are coming in, and even us old fans. You know, we don't want to see the same thing. Like, how many times are we going to see a Death Star?
Well, this is,
you know, we want to see something different. How are you going to push it?
This is a good point.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I think this is such a great topic, because we're in a very unique position with Star Wars. Star Wars has been around for a long time. And because of that, you have this weird thing now to where you have to please the original fans, but you also had to appeal to new ones. Mm-hmm. Now, this wasn't such a big deal when Star Wars was only like 10, 20 years old, because you basically had maybe 2 or 3 generations coming up, and they weren't that far apart. The world, while it was changing, was still not drastically different. And now you have this thing to where Star Wars is like, 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So now you got all of us original fans who are pushing 50, 60 or older. Mm-hmm. Then you have fans that are more kind of like in your thing. Mm-hmm. Like you came into it with basically the prequels or just before. So you have that. And then you have people that came into it, more recently, maybe with the sequel trilogy. So you have a definite thing now to where you have to appeal to this wide age range.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Lucas, of course, always made Star Wars for kids. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, that was okay because Lucas had, he had this ability to make things basically for kids, but it appealed to everybody. Mm-hmm. There was a message for everybody there. And I think that's because he took the classic, Flash Gordon type serial action adventure thing, the hero's journey, of course, that we talk about, more of the literary techniques. And then, of course, he wrapped it in a moral of the story, for kids or whatever, and just kind of made it more toward that.
Right.
But now those kids have all grown up and, it's like, what do you do now? It's sort of like what your implication is. Do you keep making Star Wars more derivative to where you're basically recycling the same ideas, or do you explore it? The answer to that, I think, is to do basically what the Mandalorian's doing, take it in different. The Star Wars universe is huge.
Yes.
And here's another thing, before you get to your thoughts. Look at what the novels are doing.
Yes.
I think that that's the perfect example. Both Legends and new canon, by the way. I'm not just talking about one or the other. Both. Just the whole Star Wars novel thing in general. I think that you can push boundaries in the same way that the novels have. They've gone way beyond, but yet they still feel like Star Wars.
Definitely.
Like even the Thrawn trilogy of novels that I'm reading right now. You know, there's a lot of things going on in there that have nothing to do with what we've grown used to as far as the Skywalker saga, but they feel like Star Wars, and they're great stories.
Definitely. I think, you know, you hit the nail right on the head, at least one of the nails, I believe. And that's actually kind of one of my points, is that I think they should really mind a lot of things as far as when it comes to films or, you know, stuff on Disney Plus or whatnot, to, you know, get a lot of that from the novels, because there's so many, and we've talked about how many books we would love to see and turn into movies.
Oh yeah.
So that alone, even if you want to revisit some time periods or some characters such as Palpatine or Invader, okay, you can do Lords of the Sith and you can turn that into a book. Into a movie.
That's why it irritated me when, I understand what she was saying, but when Kathleen Kennedy was talking, and, you know, she was like, well, you know, unlike Marvel or DC or whatever, you know, we don't have any books or comics that we could draw from for material. She's really talking more like 7, 8, 9. Although technically there was the Timothy Zahn trilogy.
Yeah.
But it's like, how mental do you have to be the head of Lucasfilm and not realize you have a whole treasure trove full of comics and books full of wonderful stories?
Afra, you got...
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, you got Poe Dameron,
man,
you got
it's
everything.
just like everything. And even, you started to mention it, like even the new trilogy, besides Thrawn, but you also have, you know, like all the other books, Lords of the Sith,
Aftermath.
You know, the Aftermath trilogy, Lost Stars.
Yeah.
You know, just all kinds of stuff that you could draw really good stories that would make really great movies.
Yeah, and I think from that standpoint, if you took concepts, at least if you're not taking the complete story, but let's say you might use it as a concept or as a backdrop, but then that's when you use a lot of diversity, like we're seeing with The Mandalorian as far as directors. So now you got, you know, Deborah Chow, you know, doing stuff. Now you have all these different young directors who could, you know, easily take on these things, and it's not hurting the core, because now you're giving them brand new characters to develop, and you're giving them their own piece of the Star Wars pie. And I think that's where you're going to get a lot of different things as far as perspective. You can talk about a lot of different, you know, and that's one of the things that, like I said, you know, for my grandfather, you know, watching The Mandalorian, this is a new show, but it reminded him of a time to which he was actually literally a part of, being in the Vietnam War. So in that space, it reminded him, like, man, those look like the rice patties that, you know, we saw when we were in Vietnam. It's interesting
because, as you know, the whole Battle of Endor in Return of the Jedi was an allegory for the Vietnam War.
Exactly.
The idea that the more primitive could take on, you know, the high tech.
Exactly. And that's kind of basically, they kind of brought that back in The Mandalorian as a beat, you know. So I think with things like that, that's really how you push it forward.
Well, don't forget the Old Republic. You could do a whole thing on the old, which we thought we were getting with the Benioff and Weiss trilogy that now isn't going to happen.
Yeah, but we still might get it with, you know, Kevin Feige or someone else.
Well, I hope somebody takes on that.
Definitely.
I really do. I mean,
because, you know, fans have been clamoring for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. I mean, why not hit the Old Republic? The Old Republic would be one of the easiest ways that people could actually push the boundaries of Star Wars.
And you have material from the game.
You got the material from the games. You got it. And, you know, it's not like they actually have to make a movie based on that. They could cherry pick different ideas from different things and, you know, create their own original stories.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, just take the concepts of things and then create, you know, your own. You know, it's kind of like how Michael Jackson took a lot of different types of dance and then kind of created it to be his own.
Right.
So I think that's what you can do. So you can just take concepts from here, 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 and here. Because like I said, you know, we never thought with Rogue One just a complete war movie but it was really amazing. It was like, yo, this is awesome. The Mandalorian is like a Western. Amazing. So what's to stop them from doing a political thriller? I mean, political shows are very popular on TV right now.
I've always wanted to see a Star Wars horror movie.
Yeah, I remember you did.
I think it would just be like the coolest thing ever.
Well, and you could do that with the Dathomir witches. You know what I'm saying? You can do things who are on, Mortis, and, you can find those, because those are some creepy places. So, yeah, there's tons of things you can do with it. So I just feel like if you just get the right directors and I think the biggest thing is finding super fans, expanding the think tank, so to speak. I think that's one that's from super fans.
That's a big thing too, because one of the more disturbing trends, as you know, is that, they would hire a director and then fire the director. And it's kind of like, okay, you could see that happening maybe once, but it's like 90% of the time. It's like, well, what are you guys?
Yeah, like just because they're the hot director
talking to them or
exactly.
what? It's like, I don't get it. So I mean, they really need to, I think, tighten up, because in that same interview, Kathleen Kennedy went on to say that you have to be really careful about who you're hiring, because even good directors, I mean, there's just something about Star Wars that
it's touchy.
Yeah, it's like a razor thin line that you have to maintain. You have to maintain the traditions, but at the same time, you got to try to push some boundaries, give us something new.
All right.
And that's difficult. But my whole thing is but the authors of these novels have been doing that for decades.
True.
So, get one of them to write it. Let them write the movie.
Exactly.
And then just bring a director in to direct it. It's like, how hard can the whole thing be?
I think we should change when Kathleen Kennedy decides to step down, one of us needs to step in, like, you know what? We got this.
Yeah, if only we can get her to be on the podcast, right?
I know, right?
I don't know. Of course, if she were on our show, we'd be all like, oh, we love your stuff.
Groveling, kissing your feet.
Yeah, exactly. We would be the shills, as everybody calls them. It's like not saying anything, or we'd throw them really softball. Well, or we would do this. Like, some people have said.
Yeah, not us, but.
Yeah. It should be like, I don't know. I've seen some of you guys at show.
Right.
Should get her and Rian Johnson in a nice little round table.
Oh, man. We probably have the highest rated show ever.
We would. But it'd be kind of cool.
Definitely.
I don't know. What about you guys? What do you think? How do you think that Star Wars would best push the boundaries, maintaining the traditions, maintaining everything that makes it Star Wars, but yet, pushes it beyond a little bit of the same old, same old? Let us know in the comments section below. All right.
We'll see. I
doff
my hat to you, sir.
Yes. Now it is time to introduce what is probably my favorite segment that we like to call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where we answer your questions. So, what's our first question?
Well, our first question is submitted by Waylon Gates. And the question is, was that boss that we saw in the second chapter of The Mandalorian?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so.
I don't think so either, because it was a couple of them.
Tradoshans, I think, are what they're called, if I remember correctly. And yeah, there's a couple of them. I didn't hear any rumblings that Bosk had ever made an appearance. The other thing, too, is that you have to remember what Bosk's whole backstory. Now, granted, a lot of his backstory now is no longer canon. But the one thing that we do know, even just from the context of the film, he's definitely one of the top bounty hunters around.
Definitely.
We also know that the games are roughly canon. They're saying that the games aren't necessarily like 100% canon, but you can basically, I guess, formulate some opinions. And Bosk is in Battlefront or Battlefront 2. And, again, he's an incredible warrior. I don't think that the Mandalorian would have had a very easy time against him.
No.
Not to mention, if it was Bosk, he probably would have been hunting by himself. And he would have been a really, really difficult
adversary
to defeat. So, Yeah, I don't think that was Bosk.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think it was Filoni and Favreau basically doing a similar thing that they did with IG-88 with IG-11, and that's giving us a nod,
right? Without having to
actually be the character.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, I do hope though that we do see Bosk.
Yeah, that would be
in
cool.
one of the episodes. I think that would be really cool. I don't think it would do anything to endanger, any of the canon or any continuity or anything like that. I think it would be kind of cool. And especially since this is only taking place like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And the last time we saw Bosk was in The Empire Strikes Back. So, you're talking about, a period of maybe 6, 7, 8 years tops.
Right. Do you think they're ever going to mention Boba Fett in The Mandalorian?
Yeah, I hope so.
I just mention him, like...
I hope so. You would think that they would, only because, they're all talking about, like, oh, yeah, only one person can... Now, granted, this is taking place after Boba Fett's technically in the Sarlacc pit. But I think it's funny, though, that it seems like that had been going on for a while. I don't know if it's since the Empire collapsed or not, where they can only be, coming up one at a time or something. But it's like here you got Boba Fett who's running around in Mandalorian armor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like would have been hilarious if they made like somebody from the guild like, yeah, you're good, but you're no Fett. Like you're not Boba Fett or anything like that. Like that just kind of.
Or if they now, well, no, they can't do that anyway because he was technically a clone. I was going to say they can like kind of retcon his thing and make him a foundling or something. But I mean. First of all, it would be interesting now to see how the Fetts, Jango and Boba, got this Mandalorian armor in the first place if they're not really Mandalorians. Now, that could have been explained in the Clone Wars. I admit I don't remember, but I don't think it was.
Either.
So, I would also like to see in The Mandalorian, maybe Season 2, if they finally show Boba Fett coming out of the Sarlacc pit. That would be awesome.
That would be.
And it would be really cool if he started going around being active again, like how that would play out with the Mandalorian and basically the whole group of them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Let's see. But at any rate, that was not Bosk.
Yeah.
All right. What's our next question?
All right. The next question comes from Lauren Babby. Her question is, out of all the planets that we have seen, where would you want to go to visit?
Well, not Mustafar.
Definitely not. Not with my asthma. No thanks.
I don't think Tatooine either. No. Definitely not Hoth.
Oh, God, no.
Because I don't do well in the cold.
Man, Michigan is enough. Sometimes Michigan does feel like Hoth.
Yeah, out of all the planets. It's going to sound crazy, but probably Coruscant. The place is like hopping.
Yeah, Coruscant looks cool. I mean, it's it's like the New York of like Star Wars.
Essentially. Because if you really stop and think about it, and I never really did until literally just this second, all the planets are either extremes or like even Endor. I mean, it's like a forest moon. Yeah. Who would want to go there? It's like
unless you love nature and
or Camino.
I actually wouldn't mind Camino. I actually like the weather. I mean, the rain. It's soothing. I probably would visit there. I wouldn't want to live there. That's why she said visit. Yeah, so I would visit there. That would be cool.
Yeah, visiting. All right.
It's like going to Seattle.
Cool. Let's see. Alderaan is out.
Yeah. It's no longer.
I could fly through there technically.
Actually, I would love to visit Naboo.
Naboo would be cool, yes.
Because that's like the perfect...
Yeah, that'd be kind of like your little vacation
Exactly,
spot.
Yeah.
Naboo would be cool.
Naboo was like, Bora Bora or something.
Man, I'm trying to think of like all the planets that we've been introduced to. Because there's like 6 or 7 planets that we're introduced to in Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the first 10 minutes of the movie. I remember we're sitting there like I got to take notes, man. And like... going, okay, now we're here, and meanwhile on this, and then on this, and you're like, okay, I don't even know any of these things.
Jeddah looks too much like Tatooine.
Yeah. And Jakku. We'll rule that out, too.
Exactly. By default. I don't think I would want to go. Well, Scarif, once again, it's cool, but it reminds me too much like...
Kind of has a cool beach, though.
It does.
It has like kind of like that whole Caribbean Hawaii vibe.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be cool. You know, when it's not in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want to go to any other.
Now I'm trying to think of, well, Geonosis probably wouldn't be too much fun.
No.
Plus, it's kind of like Starship Troopers-ish with all the insects. and
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't even like, going down south with some of those bugs, so
Yeah,
I'm
man,
good.
some like life-size bug trying to talk
Yeah, it's
to
tall
me.
as me.
Yeah,
Yeah. You go through like a can of Raid in like
That's what I'm
a couple
saying.
hours.
Oh, I need that flamethrower that the Mandalorian has. Let's see. Dagobah would be too humid.
And swampy is like, where do you get food?
Yeah.
There's
Be
no.
like Louisiana on steroids.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would say Coruscant. Hosnian Prime would probably not been bad had it not got blown up. Oh.
File under Alderaan. Starkiller Base.
No. Canto Bite.
Oh, yeah, I probably edited that out simply because I hate that scene so much. But yeah,
Canto Bite looks cool.
that's kind of cool. Kind of Mediterranean vibe
Mediterranean, like almost like Paris or Greece, somewhere around there.
to it. Yeah,
All right, those are
I could do that.
Naboo and Canto Bite
And Coruscant.
and Coruscant. Yes.
There you go.
There it is.
Our top three. That's it.
All right.
All right. I think that's going to do it for our show this week.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully you guys, are enjoying our new video version of the show. Oh, don't forget, we just released our review of The Mandalorian episodes 3 and 4. So be sure to watch that. And definitely, if you guys like what we're doing, subscribe to our channel. We would love to have you as part of our community. And, follow us on Twitter and, like us on Facebook and Instagram and, all the good social media stuff at Head to Head SW. It's going to do it for our show this week. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Head to Head SW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.